The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The Moore Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The Moore Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The Moore Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting live from the UK and across the world online. You're now listening to the UK's only live alternative late-night talk show. I'm Kevin Moore. For the next 3 hours, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On tonight's show, I'm back with Howard Storm, who will be sharing his life-changing near-death experience and how it transformed his life. Also coming up, are you struggling to pay your grocery bills? Discover why your grocery bill will double and what you can do about it, as I'll be speaking to Marjorie Wildcraft, who's here to share her mission of sustainable living by growing your own food. Now, this is a live show, so you may call in at any time in the show to speak to the guest or share your opinion. Call us on 0292 000 3666 or text your comments and questions to 07728 758 759. International listeners outside the UK may Skype the show by adding The Moore Show Live. Or you may choose to interact with us on Facebook and Twitter. We are live every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday from 1 AM to 4 AM British Summer Time, and that's Monday, Wednesday and Friday, 8 PM to 11 PM Eastern Daylight Time in America. So first, let's speak to Howard Storm. Now, Howard has joined me on the show previously, where he spoke about his near-death experience and awakening. For those of you who have not heard of Howard Storm, he was previously a professor of art for 20 years at Northern Kentucky University. However, in 1985, following his near-death experience in Paris, his life was transformed. He eventually studied to become a pastor, and in 1992 was ordained in the United Church of Christ. Good evening, Howard. It's good to have you back on the show.
Nice to be back.
I was going to say to you, Howard, last time you came on the show, which would have been probably a year and a half ago now, or more, your video, it got some great, great reviews, and a lot of people love your work. I mean, do you know how much you're loved?
That's nice to hear. No, I don't. But I'm glad to hear it.
Well,
I'll
you
take
are.
all the love I can get.
You are loved, and I think people find your story fascinating. I mean, I did when I interviewed you to begin with. So, Howard, if you don't mind, let's dive straight into it. Now, this experience occurred in the 1980s, in the mid-1980s, didn't it?
Yes, 85.
85. So, who was Howard Storm, very briefly, before 1985? Who were you as a person?
I was a 38-year-old art professor at a university at Northern Kentucky University, and I was a hedonist. I was an atheist. I considered myself to be very egotistical and proud of it. I thought that life was short and sweet, and you went for everything you could get. The one thing you wanted to do was do things that would land you in prison, because that would not be a very pleasant experience. So I stayed within the law. So because I was not breaking the law, I considered myself a good person. Even gave a couple dollars to charity every year or so to show what a wonderful giving person I was. I had a wife and children, and I had a career, and my goal in life was to be a great artist and to become famous.
Okay. And so, leading up to the events that happen for the audience that aren't or haven't come across your work before as well, this took place in Paris. So lead us up to the scenario as it occurred.
This was the next to the last day of a 3-week art tour with a group of students and my then wife, and the next day we were going back to Amsterdam to fly out of Chipanol. So we had got up early and gone to Delacroix's studio and his home and come back to pick up the students who were sleeping late because they were exhausted because I dragged them through so many art galleries and museums. And at 11 o'clock in the morning, I had, I didn't know it at the time, but what I had was a perforation of my small stomach. A hole had burst through, and the digestive juices, the gastric acid, the enzymes, and all that good stuff that's in your stomach was now leaking into my abdominal cavity. Well, the sensation that I was feeling was the most acute pain I'd ever experienced in my life, right in the center of my being. Dropped me down to the ground, kicking, screaming, terrified, panicked. My wife called the hotel desk. They called an emergency service. A doctor came pretty quickly, got me off the floor, examined me, and he knew exactly what was wrong and said that I had to have surgery right away and that he was sending me to a hospital to have the surgery. Well, an ambulance came. Two very nice Frenchmen got me down to the ambulance, and off we went. And I went, I think, about 8 miles to the public hospital of Paris emergency room, where I was examined by 2 more doctors. They confirmed what the doctor at the hotel had said, sent me off to a surgical hospital. But because it was Saturday and unbeknownst to, I'm sure, the doctors at the emergency room, or unbeknownst to my wife and I, there was no surgeon available at the surgical hospital to look after me or to do the surgery, which I was told was critical that I have it within the hour.
Yes.
So I was parked in a room, and for the next approximately 10 hours, I never saw a doctor. I was never given any medication. Nobody took my blood pressure or my temperature or anything. I was just parked and left. The doctors in the United States said that probably my life expectancy was no more than 5 hours. So I was in really bad shape when that night at 8:30 a nurse came into the room and said she was very sorry, but they were unable to look at a doctor, and they would try and get one the next day, which would be Sunday. Well, since the pain that had took me to the floor, writhing and screaming and terrified, had only gotten much, much worse, because as the digestive juices migrated throughout my abdominal cavity, the area of pain was no longer a spot. It was now my whole abdominal cavity. And what was happening, to put it in simple language, was I was digesting myself. And the other thing, of course, that was happening was that infection was setting in, which, of course, ultimately resulted in extreme peritonitis. And that's another story. But anyways, when she said that, I knew that it was time to die. I had been fighting death off for hours. I was very clear about that. And I was extremely weak. It was very difficult to breathe. And so I said goodbye to my wife, and I closed my eyes and hoped to die. I knew that dying was the end of your biochemical existence, which meant it was the end of everything. And I knew that when I went unconscious, that would be the end of me, and there'd be no more of me. I went into unconsciousness, and to my complete surprise, I came out of unconsciousness, standing up next to the bed, and no longer I was very aware of the situation, but I didn't have the pain anymore. It was gone. So I was feeling great relief at being pain-free, and then I realized that not only was I pain-free, but my consciousness was greatly expanded. And to some of what that was I could see better, I could hear better, I could taste, touch, feel more than I'd ever had in my life. I tried to communicate with my wife. She, from my perspective, appeared to be ignoring me. Of course, she did not perceive me standing there. I turned to my roommate, who was a very kind Frenchman, and tried to communicate with him. I got no reaction from him. And the other thing that was going on in the room that was very disturbing is that there was something in the bed that looked remarkably exactly like me. But I refused to believe that it was me because I knew what was in the bed was dead. And I knew that what was in the bed couldn't possibly be me because I was standing there looking at it. And you can't be standing looking at yourself. I mean, except perhaps in a mirror. Anyhow, it was very upsetting and very confusing. And I heard people outside the room calling me by name. And I went over to the doorway of the room, and they were standing off in the unlit hallway of the room. It's now evening. And they were saying, "Howard, let's go, hurry up, it's time to go." And I said, "Are you here to take me to surgery? I'm very sick, I need to have an operation." And they said, "We know all about you. We've been waiting for you. No more questions, time to go, let's go." So my assumption was that they were hospital personnel who had come to take me to my surgery. So I left the room and went with them into the shadowy hallway. I was very reluctant to do that because I had a bad feeling about that, because the room was bright and well lit, and these people were very indistinct in the shadows and kept their distance from me. And it was very clear that they did not want me to get close to them at that time. So anyways, they led me on a very long journey, which if I were to reenact that journey in this world, I would have to walk a distance of many, many miles, maybe like 100 miles or something. I mean, from now on, nothing makes any rational sense, because I'm not, although I think that I'm still in this world, I am departing this world.
Okay.
Going into another dimension, if you will.
Okay, how when you say you left your body, how real did you feel, when you had left your body? I mean, did you feel solid? I mean,
I felt more real. Matter of fact, I know this sounds irrational, but my experience was much more real than anything I've ever experienced in what we call reality. So I consider this reality to be secondary to a greater reality that someday we all get to participate in.
And when you left your body, was it almost instantaneous? From leaving your body to just appearing next to your body?
Yes, it was.
What does that feel like, the acceptance that you're going to die? What did that point feel like?
Well, it was extremely, I mean, I was sad and angry and disappointed because I was 38 years old. I was sort of beginning to hit my stride in terms of my career. I was having some success, and like, nobody expects to just die when you're 38 years old for no good reason. I mean, I didn't even know what was killing me, except there was this incredible pain in me. How can you pop a hole in your, digestive system? It's crazy.
And
it makes no sense.
Was you conscious of yourself breathing at the time when you'd left your body? Was you still attempting to breathe? Was that still, I mean, what?
No, I'd stopped breathing.
Okay, so these entities, what were they, like shadows, or were they demonic entities that came to collect you?
Well, at this time, they appeared to be very, very bland. They were all adults, and I was aware that they seemed to be male and female, and they were incredibly nondescript, just figures in the shadows. They seemed to be wearing all the same clothing, and I couldn't really make them out. I think that part of the reason why they kept their distance from me was because they really didn't want me to see their appearance.
Right. Okay. And you did go with them, didn't you?
Yeah, because I thought I was going to get my operation. I thought I was going to get the help that I needed.
What was their and their attitude towards you? What you felt it was quite negative, quite it wasn't. Were you worried for yourself at the time?
At first, they were just very officious and matter of fact, and hurry up, come on, let's go, keep moving, let's go, don't ask questions, this way, keep going, like that. And as time went on, because I kept asking questions, even though they kept telling me not to ask questions, and they never answered any questions that I asked. They started to get ruder, and I started to become increasingly afraid of them because I began to realize, nobody is this nasty. And then I started hearing people talking about me and other people telling them to be quiet, that I could hear them and they didn't want to hear the things that they were saying. And so I was getting very, very afraid, and finally came to the point where we were in an abject darkness zone where I said to them, I'm not going any further. Unfortunately, because we had been walking so long, I had no idea where I was. There was no signifiers in the situation. There was no walls, there was no ups or downs or anything, just walking through this plane of space. And so there's absolutely no sense of orientation. So when I said I'm not going to go with you any further, I wanted to go back, but I, of course, had no idea which way was back. And they said, you're almost there, and they started to push and pull at me. So I fought back as best I could, and because I had been a rugged guy in my youth, I knew how to fight, and I knew how to take hits. And I fought as hard and as well as I could, but there were many of them now. I can't tell you how many because there was no light, but by their voices and by their touch, I would guess that there were maybe hundreds or more. And what they were doing was they were just playing with me because they had no interest in destroying me. What they wanted to do was they liked the fact that I fought back. And I liked the fact that what they were doing to me really hurt. Like, for example, people would stick a finger in my eye and try and pull my eye out. Another one would be trying to chew my ear off. Another one would be playing with my private parts and things like that. They were just having a time of it. And the more I reacted, the better they liked it. And this went on and got much worse. And they were just, it's just pure sadism. And I don't go into any more details about it, but let's just say that this is what they live for, and this is what they are good at. And eventually I was unable to resist anything anymore, just laying on the ground, all ripped up, broken up. But more importantly, emotionally, totally, utterly devastated.
Okay.
And,
No. Well, I was just going to. I hate to interrupt you because this is, an interesting story. Well, I want to get more into where you thought you were at that time, and your story then going towards the light and where that journey took you. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back after this break.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines. Available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The More Show.
Welcome back to the show. I'm still currently joined with Reverend Howard Storm, who had a near-death experience back in 1985, which changed his life and many around him from the story that he's now telling us. And he would say that he wasn't a very loving man, or had no belief that life continues when you pass on at this time. And he's now sharing his story where he left his body after before going to surgery, and you were with these not demonic, but these entities that were taking you towards a long tunnel that seemed to go to a very negative place. Is that right, Howard?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay, so when you got to this place, what was this place?
Well, a little later on, I had an eternity to consider the situation. And this is pretty hard for me to say, even though I've told this story a lot and had an opportunity of almost 30 years to think about it. It was a place where egotists go. It was a place where people who are not very loving go. It's a place where people who only believe in themselves go. The sins of this world are to reject what we were created to be. And what we were created to be is to be loving people to the best of our ability. And because of the unbelief in this world, and because of the secularism and materialism of this world, many people, perhaps the majority of people, I don't know, I hope not, live for their own selfish gratification. And maybe they might have a little regard for like some family members or a few friends, but that's about it. And so, to put it simply, I went to a place of my kindred brothers and sisters in spirit. The people that were tormenting me were now acting out what they had lived in life, which was biting, clawing, tearing for their own gratification and their own sense of domination of others.
Okay, so would you call this place hell?
I wouldn't hesitate to call it hell. It was certainly hellish. If someone wanted to call it purgatory, I have no problem with that. But I do believe that we all end up reaping what we've sowed in life. And if we have not lived a life that is about seeking good and seeking God and seeking love, we're certainly not going to go to heaven. We're not qualified, and we wouldn't fit in. There's no place for us there because we chose not to be there. So the alternative is to go to this place absent of all the good things that God has given us in this world. And one of the things that people completely misunderstand is that everything in this world is a gift from God, even this experience of life. And so the birds, the trees, the flowers, the sunsets, the joys, the tears, it's all a gift from God. And when we live this world, if we have rejected that, we get to go to a place where none of that is. It's just people's raw inner selves acting out what they have lived in life.
But I've asked you this question before on the previous show. Do you think you created this experience? I mean, do you really believe that such a place like hell exists? I mean, do you not think because you were so switched off to yourself, and the fact that life could possibly continue, that this was an experience that you created because this where you were in your heart?
I flat out reject that proposal, because I would have to be the sickest, dumbest, most masochistic person in the world to conceive of such an existence. If I had wanted to fabricate in my delusions a life after death, I would have been in a Turkish harem, smoking a hookah, surrounded by 72 beautiful, comely maidens who were about to pleasure me.
I have to say, for me, I find it difficult to think that there is such a place as hell, only because its context is so very negative, and I'd like to think when I pass on, if I've done things that are wrong, it's only for me to judge myself, not to go to such a level like that. That's not taking away anything from your experience. I've interviewed people before on this show that say that we create our experience when we pass on. So, if you want to create whatever is your context of belief, then that's what you will create. Needed to sort of give you that well, life is, when you continue, that's what they tell me, that you go on and create the experience that you want.
They're wrong.
Okay.
I did not create that experience.
Okay.
Flat out, did not do it.
Okay.
I was a pleasure seeker. Why would I seek torment beyond anything this world can imagine?
I don't know. I can't.
No, it's not in me. It's not in me. Never has been a part of me. Not something I've ever sought.
But
not a masochist.
Last time when I asked you that question, you did say that that could be a possibility, that you have considered that you create what you want the experience to be, as when we're in this different dimension.
In a philosophical sense, we absolutely do create it, because like our every action, our every thought, our every word, our every deed in this world is creating our destiny.
Yes, but do you believe in a condemning God? I mean, I can't believe in it.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely not.
No.
God doesn't condemn and God doesn't judge. God wants everybody to be wonderful and loving and kind and successful and have a beautiful life. That's God's desire. But we thwart that.
If God doesn't condemn, then, and which I don't believe that for me, I can't go down that road. But I'm, this is a show where people can view their opinions on. I'm just challenging the opposite. Yeah. Then surely some of the religions can't all be completely on the same par, then, can they? Because I mean, in some of the religious texts, it talks about a condemning, judgmental, unloving God, and that But from what you're saying, that's very opposite. This was, let me get this right. This was you where you were in I still don't get it. Is this where do you feel that this is where you were in your way that you looked at the world? Or are you? But then, are you saying on the other hand that that you were being judged at that time? But are you saying you were judging yourself? Who created this hell experience for you then?
I think that I was drawn to it. Like, for example, people who are drawn to the light go to the light. People who are drawn to the dark go to the dark. And I don't think that God wants anybody to go to hell. I don't think that's why God created a single individual. I think that people choose that. I think that there's millions of people in this world living in anguish because of addictions, because of misery that they brought upon themselves. And there are healers in the world that would like to go to those people and say, if you could only stop the addiction, we could turn your life around, and you would get better. But they don't do that. Why don't they do that?
Because they don't love themselves?
I mean, there's infinite number of possibilities of why they're in the place that they're at, but they are in a very negative place, and many of those people not only are in a negative place themselves, but impose that negativity on every situation they're in and everyone they're around. They destroy their families. They destroy their workplace. I mean, they're destructive people.
Okay. Moving the story just forward a little bit here. So you would class this place that you went as hell, if there was a word that you could equal it to. But there was a way out for you, wasn't there?
Yes. I'll skip some things and just go right to that. After they had left me alone and I went through my life, I was completely hopeless, realized that I was going to be in this place and that they had promised me that it was going to get much worse. And I was prepared to believe them, and that was probably true. And I had a memory of my childhood going to a Sunday school class and believing in Jesus and singing about Jesus. And this was a very distant memory. And so it seemed like the only hope that I had. And it seemed like a pretty faint, distant hope, but I took a chance and I called out to Jesus to save me. And he came and healed me, made me whole, loved me, embraced me, and carried me out of that place.
So you was physically removed from that place when you invoked what you would class as, or you would call Jesus Christ. He came for you, and where did you go? Where did you end up then?
Well, we were traveling at a very great speed because I was aware that we were moving through vast distances very rapidly. And all of a sudden, I realized that there was a focal point of light, which, once again, hard to understand, but it wasn't just light. It was light and love, and the love was permeating through me. I could physically feel rays of love passing through my body from this focal point. And I realized that this was heaven, God's house, God's home. And I felt such a rotter, I just felt so bad about myself that I thought, you've made a terrible mistake. You've made a terrible mistake. I don't belong here. And with that, Jesus spoke to me for the first time, and we stopped, and he said, we don't make mistakes. You do belong here. And so there we were, hanging. Behind us was a world of darkness, and in front of us was a world of light and love. And that's where we remained for the next, by Earth time, decades, years, whatever.
Okay. So do you think the souls that were left behind in the place that you had come from, do you think they all can they could get out of that place and and go to the place that you went to? Is it as easy? Is it as simple as calling out for help? I mean,
well, here I'll speak for Almighty God. How's that for arrogant? God wants them to call out. God wants them to change. God wants them to seek God. And if they were to do that, there would be a real genuine hope for them. One of the things that people don't like to talk about in the Bible is that Jesus went to hell and brought many souls out of hell. That is in the biblical literature, by the way, in Epistle of Peter.
Okay.
It's also in the Apostles' Creed, but interestingly, a lot of churches are leaving that line out of the Apostles' Creed.
Why is it when people have near-death experiences and they are just greeted by their loved ones, what makes these people so different to your very initially negative experience?
They didn't need what I needed. If I can put this in psychological terms for a minute.
Of course.
This is my own analysis, that starting off with my dysfunctional family in my early teenage years, I had been building up an ego, a suit of armor to protect myself from the dysfunctional family. Okay, so by the time I was a young man, I had a very formidable suit of armor. Think Tower of London, head to toe covered in steel.
Yeah.
I mean, the only problem with that is that once you're in the suit of armor, there's not much room for growth. You know, it was a custom-made suit. I had made it myself. And so here I was stifling my spirit within all these defenses. I was smarter than everybody. I was tougher than everybody. I was way ahead of everyone. I knew what everybody was thinking. So I thought in my egotism. Okay, this is, my delusion. And what God knew I needed was I needed to be rescued from my ego, from my egotism. And so God allowed me the privilege of having that destroyed.
So it was a bit of a wake-up call for you, because it was the only way to break you out of the pattern that you were in, the person that you were.
Yes, and I think it was ultimately a very loving thing of God to allow me to experience. But I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Okay.
That's what we call tough love here in the States.
Yeah. So you don't believe that there's some sort of ruler, for example, over hell, or there's some sort of satanic person in charge. If I just try to sum this up for my own growth as well, so I understand where you're coming from, this was a place that this was the level that spiritually that you was at the time that you.
I quite agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, do you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah, this was
saying it very well. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what I needed. That's what God knew I needed, and God let me have it.
Okay.
For my own ultimate good.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to say to our kids, "No, I'm not going to buy you a car, and no, I'm not going to subsidize your drug habit anymore. I'm no longer going to allow. I'm no longer to pay your college tuition while you flounder around and and do nothing but party and drink. Sometimes God says, "You're on your own, kid. Good luck."
Yeah, absolutely, and you can relate that to this experience. And would you say that? I forgot. I'm losing my train of thought here a little bit. There was a question leading on to that. No, it's gone. It'll come back to me. Let's move on a little bit here then. This place, this dimension that you went to with the figure Jesus Christ, why do you think you needed that the Christ figure there? Could it not have been someone else?
For me, because of my culture and my upbringing, middle class American Protestant, that's how I knew God. That for me, that was how I related to God. So I wouldn't have called on anyone else. It would never would have occurred to me.
That's my point though earlier on, that you create the experience that you want when you pass on. So the only reference you knew to anything holy in the sense was for your teachings from when you were younger, which was the Christ figure.
Right.
Could you not have called on someone else that could have influenced you had that first thought not come to mind? I mean, again, can you see the point I'm trying to make, that you create the experience that you want it to be? So if Jesus is going to save you because that's what you believe in, that's what's going to happen. If someone else is, going to be the person you meet, like loving members of family or something like that, they would have been the ones. Can you go down that road?
Yes, but for me, that's just speculation. The whole experience is so incredibly bizarre, and I experienced it, and I've had to make huge changes in my life because of the experience. So I have to kind of stick with the program that I was given.
As it was. That's right.
Let me just go with your idea for a minute. Like, I was raised an English-speaking person. What if I'd grown up in another country with another language and a whole other cultural tradition? It would have been a different experience.
Had you lived in India or some other Far East country, yes, of course it would have been.
Exactly.
It would have been a different God. Well, let's get more into God and your experience with the dimension that you went into, because this is where it's all interesting, but this is where it gets high, super, light speed interesting. So bear with us, and we'll be right back after this short break.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The Moore Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The Moore Show.
That's right. I'm still currently joined with Reverend Howard Storm. Howard, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Howard, when you had arrived in, would you call it heaven that you arrived in, or would you call it home?
Well, I never made it to heaven, but I call it home.
Yeah.
It's where we belong and where we get to be who we really were created to be.
Okay. So now you mentioned before the ad break that you were there for what you would class on Earth years as decades.
Yes.
So, but initially when you got there, did you have what was called a life review? Did you get to review your life?
Yes, unfortunately, that was the first thing that Jesus wanted me to experience. And we went through my life very carefully. He ran it. The angels around us ran it. And as it went from my birth through my childhood and into my adolescence, things started to turn sour, and I began to regret my life review very much, but he insisted on me watching it. And there were numerous times during it when I said, I don't want to see this anymore. The bottom line is that he was trying to show me how I had been compassionate or how I had not been compassionate. And unfortunately, being selfish and manipulative and successful left very little, almost no room for compassion in my life.
So you judged yourself when having this life review, then? You were your own judge?
Yes.
Okay. And that was probably the hardest self-judgment, than anyone else judging you, I suppose.
Yes, and also there's no, when you're in the presence of Jesus and the angels, there's no lying, there's no deception, there's no evasion. It's just the truth right there. And you also get to experience how other people felt about the things that you said and did. You can feel their pain and their tears and their hurt. Right,
okay. And also the joyous times as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I suppose this was, the start of your change, to the person that you have become. But sticking with being in this I don't know how you class it really. Let's call it home just for now, as what you just called it there, home. Did you get to interact with other spiritual beings? Were there family members there as well?
The angels asked if I wanted to know who they were, because I couldn't. They were brilliant. I mean, and I mean that visually brilliant, and I couldn't make them out. And they said, "Do you want to see us in a human form to know who we are?" And I said, "No, I don't." I said, "I hate people. I never want to see people again."
Well, yes, but did you get to meet any of your relatives?
I'm sure that a number of these people were my relatives, but I never got to identify them.
Okay. And what were some of the most amazing insights that you had while you were over there about the universe and about life and the purpose of it?
I believe that Jesus is the perfect revelation of God, that he is a persona of God to help us understand God and know God. And so some of the characteristics of Jesus, and this also goes for the angels, the other people there, all have a terrific sense of humor. They love to laugh. They like to joke. They're very happy, joyful people, interested in being light and funny, and they are very, very, very forgiving. They don't like the nasty things that we do, but they understand that that's part of our learning experience. That's who we are, and that's what we do. And they're hoping that through our negative experiences that we ultimately turn those into positive qualities. So they're very hopeful. What they want is for us to ultimately come to heaven, to grow and to evolve in heaven, to become beautiful spiritual beings like they are. So ultimately our ambition is to become more and more like Christ.
Was there any talk of life on other planets?
Oh yes, I asked about life on other planets, and Jesus said that the universe was full of life, and there was just an incalculable amount of life and intelligent life on other planets. And I said, what do they look like? And so he said, here, I'll show you. And so he paraded images of beings from other planets, and the parade began with human-like beings who began to, as the parade went by, they became more and more different than us. And finally, I was looking at people that looked more like undersea creatures or insects or something, and I said, okay, that's enough. I don't want to see anymore. It's getting a little weird here. It was creepy.
Wow. And do you think Jesus has visited those planets? I mean, do they look up to Jesus?
I asked him, and he said he's been everywhere. He's been to every planet, but not the Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus. I mean, he didn't go there as a young Jewish male guy. I mean, he went in their form. He was relatable in every world that he was in.
Okay. Have you ever? I mean, what were some of the things that happened to you while over there that you've not spoken about on air before? Is there anything you've not mentioned before?
Yeah, I get in lots of trouble when I go into the things that I don't talk about because, it's funny that the
you're past the watershed. Don't worry.
the world isn't so ready to know things. Like, for example, I don't know if I talked about this on air, but I have talked about it before, that we only use a tiny fraction of our brain. Like, I understand it's about 10%. And Jesus said that we have abilities and powers built into us genetically, into our biology, to do things like teleport throughout the universe, to have we could in this world be linked to every other intelligent being in this universe. We could grow our food by sitting down and contemplating it and watching it grow right before our eyes, from like a seed to an edible plant. We could control the weather in unison with everybody else in the world. There's all that's waiting for us. The problem is, the reason why we don't have those gifts now, why we're being held back from them, is because we would abuse them. Look at the gifts that the gifts of since the Age of Enlightenment that we've been given, and how we are totally abusing them. Like nuclear energy, for example. I mean, we don't know how to play with the toys that we've been given so far. So it's quite obvious that we are not ready to be able to telepathically know everyone on this planet. But the day is coming, and it's not very far off, frankly. It's just not very far off when that's going to happen.
But
it's going to be a different world.
I mean, do we not have free will, though?
Yes, that's one of the greatest gifts that we've been given, and it's such a loving thing to do. The analogy that I like to use, that when my children grew up, I have 2 biological children and 4 children through my second marriage, and so 6 kids. And you at some point you have to let them fly. At some point they've got to leave the nest, and you can't control them anymore. And then it's a question of still loving them and still having hopes and desires for them, even when they at times go astray. And so God is like that. God has given us this gift of like, okay, you want to be nasty, you want to go out and kill millions of people, you want to blow up bombs on buses and do all kinds of horrible things. I'm not going to stop you, but it's not what I want you to do.
Do you think these people choose that life, that some things are predestined, as in the sense that the victim and the attacker have chosen to play these roles out between each other for whatever reason they've done it for, yet that we still have the free will on both on each side not to go ahead with it? I mean,
I find that hard to believe, because I've met so many people that have come from absolutely horrible backgrounds. People that have been sexually molested regularly their entire youth and adolescence, and have turned out to be wonderful, loving, honest, spiritual people. And then again, there's people who say, well, I was molested and that's why I'm the axe murderer that I am today. I mean, I still think it's choice. I don't believe in predestination at all.
No. So you think it's down to choice, and
yeah,
we all have the choice not to knowingly harm anybody, don't we?
Absolutely. And I have impulses. I have instincts to be a bad person. I'm a human being. I'm just like anybody else. I wish I didn't, but those impulses are there. But the important thing to do is to be conscious of our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, which kind of run rampant in our consciousness, and then to make choices about what we want to do. Like when my wife annoys me, I have the choice to be cruel back to her, or I have the choice to try and be more understanding and more loving towards her. And I struggle with that every day of my life.
Yes, I think we all struggle with issues, don't we? And
yes.
I suppose that's the day-to-day growth of being a human being, learning to better yourself and those around you.
Absolutely. I mean, I hope that I do believe that I've made progress, but I believe that loving is the reason why, to learn to love and to do it and to understand it is why we were created. And it's the toughest task in this world that we've been given. And some days I despair at how little progress I make, and other days I feel, I really did a pretty good job today,
Exactly.
I'm a good old boy,
Exactly. So okay. So what is your life like now? Now, 30 years since the events of 1985.
Just recently, a little over a year ago, I retired from the ministry. I did. After my near-death experience, I went back to the university and was not satisfied with what was going on there. So I went to seminary for 3 years and got my Master's of Divinity so that I could be ordained in the United Church of Christ. And I served churches for 22 years. And then when I was 65, I was able to retire. And so now I'm having a wonderful life because I have the freedom to choose what I want to do, and I don't have any bosses telling me what to do. Just my own. So I paint and I take walks with my dogs in the woods, and I do some writing, and I have a big email ministry, and I have an opportunity to devote myself to my wife and my family, which I've always felt guilty about neglecting because the job, always took precedent over family, kind of thing. So I being retired, and I have the means to have a moderately good life. It's just wonderful.
And the message that you're spreading as well, that, from your story, it seems that life does continue, and that what actions you take in this life have ramifications for where we go. Not that you're going to be punished or anything, but, you may as well try to get it right on this end.
Absolutely. It's not just about our own salvation, so to speak. It's the world would be such a better place if let's stop hurting one another. let's put away all the war toys and let's just stop hurting one another and let's start loving one another and caring about one another. If we just started like loving children and caring about them, we would totally change the world overnight.
Absolutely, but that comes down to two things: realizing that we are all connected, no matter what of race, skin color, or anything, and secondly, that we need to start to learn to share.
Yes, and I know this sounds redundant, but particularly to share more of our resources with our children, because they're our legacy. They're the precious commodity. We've all been traumatized by a very, very difficult world that harbors a lot of evil, if you will, a lot of sick people. But if we could raise our children in a world of love and trust, it would change the world in a generation or two.
What one message would you love to give to the UK audience right now, if you could do, please?
I would tell them that that there really is a God, and God is rooting for us, and God's not particularly interested in our material success in this world, but he's interested in our relationships, how we love one another. That's what God cares about. And if you are doing your very best, no matter how humble it is, to love one another, God is extremely pleased with what you're doing.
So in a sense, he doesn't care, or well, I say he, or would you class God as, from your perspective, as not a male or female sense, but more of an energy sense, an energetic sense, a sort of source sense?
Oh, I think God is way beyond male and female. God is spirit, and I think that God is very feeling, loving, sweet being. Very, very sweet.
So, and you would class that we came from that source, that God source?
Absolutely.
So would you go down as far to say that we are God?
No, because God created the universe and we're the creation. So I think that's an important distinction. That wonderful My Fair Lady Pygmalion myth. I mean, I'm an artist, so I've always had that desire to want to create something really living. Well, we have a creator that actually created beings that could say, na doo doo, I don't want to have anything to do with you. Or they could say, yeah, I like you. I like the program. I think I want to be a part of it,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Howard, how can people get in contact with yourself if they would like to, or how can they, is there a website at all?
Yes.
Look at your work?
HowardStorm.com.
Howard Storm, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us today.
Kevin, it was a real pleasure being with you.
Thank you for bearing with us there with the technical difficulties.
No problem.
Okay, coming up, if you're struggling to pay your grocery bill, discover what you can do as I'll be speaking to Marjorie Wildcraft, who's an expert on sustainable living. Stay tuned.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.